Chapter 11, Patricia and David, Partnership. The command room was quieter than usual. The urgency of the avalanche had passed, but the tension of an unknown enemy persisted in the atmosphere of the mountain fortress. Patricia stood over the display table, arms folded as she studied the terrain map. Snow coverage, entry points, blind zones. "We missed it," she said. David stepped beside her, his gaze moving over the same data. "No," he said after a moment. "We were looking in the wrong direction." Patricia exhaled softly. "The backside of the mountain," she said. "No cameras, no patrol rotation." David nodded. "They didn't breach our defenses." A pause. "They avoided them." Patricia tapped the display, pulling up a layered grid. "We have already extended surveillance here," she said, marking new zones. "Thermal, motion, aerial sweeps. No blind approach." David adjusted one of the perimeter lines. "We should also stagger patrol timing," he added. "Make it unpredictable." She nodded immediately. "And rotate command authority. No pattern to exploit." They worked in silence for a moment, not competing, not correcting, building, together. David stepped back, studying the map. "This works." Patricia glanced at him. "We work." The words slipped out before she could stop them. A quiet pause followed. David held her gaze. Yes, something shifted. Patricia looked back at the display, but she wasn't seeing it anymore. "I had a conversation with my mother," she said. David didn't interrupt. "She knew," Patricia continued, "about us, about why I was holding back." A faint breath. "I told her I didn't want to be mated to someone who would dominate me." David's expression didn't change, but his attention sharpened. "I thought that's what I had seen growing up," she said. "My father leading, my mother yielding." She shook her head slightly. "I was wrong." David remained still, listening. "She laughed," Patricia said, almost surprised by it even now. A small smile touched her lips. "And then she showed me." Her gaze lifted to his. "Not by arguing, not by explaining." A beat. "By living it." David's brow shifted slightly. "She moved him without opposing him," Patricia said. "Guided him without diminishing him." "I was shocked when I realized what I was seeing." Her voice steadied. She never lost herself. Silence settled between them. "What I thought was submission," she said slowly, "was partnership, real partnership." David exhaled quietly. "Partnership," he said. Patricia nodded. "Yes, a give and take," she said, thinking it through as she spoke. "Not fixed, not one leading and the other following." A small pause. "It shifts, based on what's needed, on who's stronger in that moment." She met his eyes. "And trusting the other to step in when you can't." Another pause. Then she looked at him fully. "And this," she gestured between them, then toward the map. "This feels like that." David stepped closer, not crowding, just taking in her presence, soothing and strengthening him like he never expected. "I didn't think I'd have this," he said. Patricia tilted her head slightly. "What do you mean?" "A mate, specifically a fated mate," he said simply. She stilled. "I always believed my duty came first," he continued, "that it had to." A pause. "As Lander's beta, my schedule is dictated by his, supporting him in his duties, watching his back." Patricia understood that, deeply. "When he found his second chance mate, I was happy for him," David said. A breath. "But he met her eyes. "I felt jealous, and it shamed me." Silence. Then, "When I felt the bond with you," he shook his head slightly. "I realized I was wrong, and I felt unworthy, but still grateful." Patricia's breath softened. "Fate didn't take anything from me," he said. "It gave me someone who understands exactly what this life requires." His gaze held hers. Someone who won't ask me to choose a beat, and someone I wouldn't choose against. Patricia felt the last of her resistance fall away. I thought I would lose something, she admitted. Her voice was steady now, but I wasn't seeing clearly. She stepped closer. Our bond doesn't take anything from me. A faint smile. It makes me stronger. David nodded once. Stronger together. Patricia didn't hesitate. She moved fully into his arms. Yes, we are and will continue to be. No doubt, no fear, only certainty. Chapter 12. The Dress Selection. The lunar suite had been transformed. Soft light filtered through the tall windows, warming the rich fabrics draped across every available surface. Tables were arranged with trays of fruit, pastries, and delicate teas, waiting patiently for later. Reina stood in the center of the room, surrounded. "This feels like a trap," she muttered. Her dragon hummed in amusement. "You walked into it willingly." The designer inclined her head slightly, a graceful dragon in human form, elegant, composed, and quietly powerful. "Not a trap," she said smoothly. "A preparation." Reina wasn't convinced. Behind her, her mother and Queen Helena sat with unmistakable authority, watching, waiting, planning. The designer gestured and her assistant stepped forward with the first set of sketches and fabric swatches. "I took the liberty of preparing several concepts," she said. "This is not only a wedding," a slight pause, "but a mating ceremony for the future Alpha King and Queen." The weight of that settled in the room. Even Reina straightened slightly. The first sketch was revealed. Layers of soft ivory and white, structured but flowing, with subtle threads of emerald woven through the design. Reina blinked. "That's actually beautiful." Her mother smiled. "Of course it is." Reina narrowed her eyes slightly. "I'm not agreeing to anything yet." Queen Helena's lips curved faintly. "You will." Reina opened her mouth, then closed it. She turned quickly. "Let's look at the others." The next designs were laid out, more elaborate, more structured, more royal. Reina exhaled slowly. "I was thinking something a little simpler." Both her mother and the Queen spoke at the same time. "No." Reina blinked, then slowly smiled. "Fine." She turned toward Elise. "Well," Reina said lightly, "at least you'll be comfortable." Elise narrowed her eyes immediately. "That sounds like a setup." Patricia, standing nearby, hid a smile. The designer gestured again, and 2 new sketches were revealed. Bridesmaid gowns. No, not bridesmaids, maids of honor, both of them. Reina had made that decision quickly. She wouldn't choose between them. Elise stepped forward first. Oh no. The gown was elegant, flowing, intricate, and unmistakably formal. "I am not wearing something that looks like I belong in a royal portrait," Elise said. Reina folded her arms. "That's exactly where you belong. Remember, you're mated to a prince as well." Elise turned to her. "You're enjoying this." Reina didn't even try to hide it. "A little." Patricia let out a quiet breath, glancing between them. "I think it's beautiful," she offered carefully. Elise looked at her. "You're not helping." Patricia's lips twitched. "I didn't say I'd wear it without complaint." That earned her a small smile from Reina. Elise turned back to the designer. "I want something simpler, cleaner." The designer didn't respond. Instead, she looked to the Luna and the Queen, both of whom were already shaking their heads. "No," Reina's mother said calmly. Queen Helena added, just as smoothly, "You will be standing beside the future queen." A pause. "You will be dressed accordingly." Elise stared at them, then at Reina. "You planned this." Reina tilted her head slightly. "I learned from the best." Her dragon laughed outright this time. Elise exhaled slowly. "Fine," she said. But if I fall because of whatever shoes you put me in—" "You won't," Reina interrupted smoothly. Elise narrowed her eyes. That sounded rehearsed. Reina smiled. It was. Laughter rippled lightly through the room, breaking the last of the tension. The designer stepped forward again, her tone softening slightly. "These gowns are not meant to restrain you," she said. Her gaze moved between the three women. "They are meant to reflect who you are and the roles you now carry." That shifted something. Even Elise stilled slightly. Reina looked down at the sketches again, then back at Patricia, then Elise. No hesitation this time. "We'll take them," her mother smiled. Queen Helena nodded, and her dragon murmured quietly, "You never stood a chance." Reina didn't even argue. Landa and the designer. Laughter spilled from the Luna's suite. Landa paused just outside the door, one hand resting lightly against the frame. Reina's voice rose above the others, warm, unguarded, alive in a way few ever saw. He didn't interrupt immediately. For a moment he simply listened. Then he lifted his hand and knocked. The door opened quickly. "Elise was just—" Patricia started, still smiling, before she caught sight of him. Landa inclined his head slightly. "The car is ready," he said, "to take the designer and her team to the airstrip." The designer gathered her things with quiet efficiency, her assistants already moving ahead. "Thank you," she said. Reina waved absently from across the room, still laughing with Elise. "We'll talk tomorrow," she called. Landa glanced toward her briefly. She didn't notice the look. Then he turned back. "I'll see you out." The designer nodded. That was expected. The hallway fell quiet behind them. They moved through the fortress with measured steps, the distant sounds of the women's laughter fading as they walked. Outside, the air was crisp, clear. The car waited. The assistants began loading materials into the back. The designer turned toward Landa. "You've come to ensure I leave safely," she said. "Yes." A pause. Then, "I'll drive you to the airstrip." That made her look at him more closely. "That won't be necessary," she said. "Your staff—" "I prefer it," he replied. There was no pressure in his tone, but there was no room for refusal. She inclined her head. "Very well." The drive was quiet at first. The mountains stretched out around them, vast, untouched, and watchful. After several minutes, the designer spoke. "If you're hoping to learn something about the gown," she said calmly, "I'm afraid I won't be able to help you." Landa's gaze remained on the road. "I'm not." A beat. "I trust your work." That caught her attention. "Then why?" He glanced at her briefly. "I need something made." She waited. For her. Understanding flickered. The designer folded her hands in her lap. "What kind of piece?" she asked. Landa was quiet for a moment. Then, "My mate is a warrior," he said. A faint shift in his tone. Not pride, not exactly, something deeper. "She will stand beside me in ceremony," he continued. "In tradition." A pause. "But she does not belong in discomfort." The designer's eyes sharpened slightly. "She doesn't like heels," he added, a small, almost amused breath. "No," she said, "she does not." Landa's expression softened just enough to be noticed. "I want her to have something that is hers," he said. A beat. "Something from me." The car moved steadily down the mountain road. "She will wear what is expected," he continued. "She will carry everything that day requires." His voice lowered slightly. "But I want her to feel like herself." The designer studied him carefully now. "What are you asking for?" Landa answered without hesitation. "A pair of shoes." A pause. "Something she can move in," he explained further. "Something that belongs with the gown but doesn't change who she is." Understanding settled fully into the designer's expression. Not hidden, she said quietly. No, she considered that. Embellished, she asked. A faint curve touched his mouth. Yes. Subtle or bold? He didn't hesitate. Bold. The designer smiled. Of course. They drove the rest of the way in thoughtful silence. As the airstrip came into view, she spoke again. She will remember that, she said. Lander slowed the car. I know. The vehicle came to a stop. The designer gathered her things, then paused before stepping out. You understand her well, she said. Lander met her gaze. I listen. That was all. The designer inclined her head, this time with deeper respect. Then I will make something worthy of her. Lander nodded. I expected nothing less. She stepped out into the waiting air. The wind carried the faint scent of snow. As the aircraft prepared for departure, Lander remained beside the car for a moment longer. Then he turned back toward the fortress, toward the life waiting for him. Chapter 13. The Pavilion. It was the weekly video call with the Queen. The plans for the wedding were going well. Reina had given up on trying to keep up with the cost of all the extras her mother and the Queen demanded the day required. Their parents had agreed to split the cost of the wedding, and her part seemed to be just to nod in agreement with their demands. Saying no hadn't worked anyway, just served to amuse her dragon each time she tried. Today, the focus has shifted from fabrics and fittings to location. The Queen looked pleased with herself as she announced her solution. Reina leaned back slightly, grateful for the change, until Queen Helena spoke. The ceremony will take place at the lake. Reina stilled. The lake, she repeated. Helena nodded, her expression calm, assured. The same one. The memory rose instantly. Still water, fresh mountain air, Lander sitting there beside her, and the peace that day, the quiet moment that had begun everything. Reina glanced at Lander. His gaze was already on her. Yes, he said simply. Understanding passed between them. Elise leaned forward. That's beautiful, she said. But where exactly are we all going to stand? Helena's lips curved slightly. We are building a pavilion. Reina blinked. You're building a pavilion. Not just a pavilion, Helena corrected smoothly. Reina felt it immediately. This was no small structure. What if it rains? Patricia asked, practical as always. Helena didn't hesitate. It won't. A slight pause. But if it dares, she added, almost mildly, the roof is retractable, and the structure will be enclosed in glass. Silence. Reina stared at her. Of course it is, Helena continued, as if discussing something entirely ordinary. It will open fully to the lake when the weather is clear, she said, and close seamlessly if needed. Elise leaned back slowly. So, not just a pavilion. A complex, Reina corrected. Helena inclined her head slightly. Yes. Reina narrowed her eyes just a fraction. How large of a complex are we talking about? Helena didn't even pretend to minimize it. There will be guest accommodations, she said. A small hotel for extended stays. Elise's brows lifted. A small hotel. Walking trails, Helena continued. Hiking paths, climbing routes. Patricia let out a quiet breath. You're building an entire retreat. Helena folded her hands lightly in her lap. It will serve the clans long after the ceremony. A pause. For gatherings, events, ceremonies. Her gaze shifted briefly to Reina, and quieter retreats when needed. Reina felt the weight of that. This wasn't just a wedding location. It was a legacy. Still, that's a lot, Reina said carefully. Helena's expression didn't change. Yes, but the project is well underway. The pavilion is almost finished. It will be ready for you to come visit and get a feel for it by next month. A beat. Elise leaned forward again, a faint smile tugging at her lips. And the Alpha King is fine with this? That earned the smallest flicker of amusement from Helena. He couldn't argue with my presentation and its future value to the realm. This will be the first of many uses, she said smoothly. A pause. Reina huffed a quiet laugh. So, this isn't a wedding expense. Helena's gaze met hers. No, a faint smile. It is an infrastructure decision. Patricia let out a soft laugh. That's one way to justify it. Helena's tone remained serene. It is the correct way. Reina shook her head slightly, though a smile had formed despite herself. You built a complex, she said, for gatherings, events, ceremonies. Her gaze shifted briefly across the room, lingering, just slightly, on Elise, then Patricia. And future celebrations, she added. That was all. But it was enough. Elise went very still. Patricia blinked once, then both of them flushed. Reina caught it immediately and smiled. Helena continued as if she had said nothing unusual. It would be a shame, she went on calmly, to build something of this scale for only a single occasion. Elise cleared her throat. I'm sure it will be very useful. Patricia looked anywhere but at Helena. Yes, she added quickly, very useful. Reina's smile widened just slightly. Landa, beside her, remained perfectly composed, but she felt it through the bond, amusement. Helena's gaze returned to Reina. It will be a place of beginnings, she said. The words settled differently now. Reina let them linger for a moment, then drew in a breath and shifted. How? She asked, her tone sharpening just slightly. We only have 4 months. Elise blinked. That's actually a very good question. Patricia nodded. Yes, even for this, she gestured vaguely. That's a tight timeline. Helena didn't look concerned. The pavilion itself is nearly complete, she said. Silence. Reina stared at her. Nearly complete. Helena inclined her head. As soon as the Alpha King agreed to the project, I instructed the contractors to begin. A small pause. The primary structure is already in place. Reina let out a slow breath. Of course it was. And the rest? She asked. The boutique hotel will begin construction next week, Helena continued. It will not be required for your ceremony. Elise leaned back slightly. So this has been happening for a while. Yes. We had all agreed the wedding would be held at Pinnacle, but I deemed the ballroom to be insufficient for the occasion. Reina couldn't argue with that. Patricia let out a quiet breath. That's actually impressive. Elise nodded, and a little intimidating. Reina glanced once more at Landa. The lake, the trees, the place where everything had begun, and now something built to last. Her dragon stirred softly. Not just a beginning. Reina didn't argue. Chapter 14. Investigation Briefing. The room was quieter than the last time they had gathered. No urgency, no alarms, just focus. Reina stood at the head of the table. The display behind her dimmed for now. Landa stood at her right, Leif at her left. The others settled into place quickly. Let's keep this brief, Reina said. No one objected. She nodded once. Security. Patricia stepped forward, David beside her. We've expanded surveillance to cover the entire mountain perimeter, Patricia said, including the previously unmonitored far side. David continued without pause. Thermal imaging, motion detection, and aerial sweeps are now active. Patrol routes have been randomized. No predictable patterns. Patricia added. We've also implemented rotating command authority for all patrol units. A beat. No single point of failure. Reina nodded. Good. Her gaze shifted. Finance. Landa stepped forward slightly. Jonathan remained just behind him, observant but silent. We've begun reviewing publicly available financial data on potential competitors, Landa said. A pause. But our scope is limited, Jonathan added quietly. We're operating within legal boundaries. That restricts how deeply we can investigate external entities. Reina's expression didn't change. Understood. Her eyes moved across the room. That leaves internal exposure. The tone shifted. Subtle, but unmistakable. We're conducting a full review of management-level personnel, she continued. Anyone with access to sensitive systems or operational data. A few heads lifted slightly. Reina didn't soften it. They are employees of Snowy Mountain, she said. They've signed confidentiality agreements. A pause. That gives us more latitude. Leif's expression hardened slightly. You believe this required insider access? Reina met his gaze. With this level of execution? A beat. Yes. Silence settled. David spoke next. They didn't just know where to strike, he said. They knew how we operate. Patricia nodded once. And our weak point. Reina stepped forward slightly. Which means we assume nothing. Her voice was calm, controlled. We verify everything. Landa's gaze moved across the room. Discreetly, he added. Reina inclined her head. Yes. Another pause. Then, continue your reviews, she said. Report anything irregular, no matter how small. Her gaze sharpened slightly. We're not looking for coincidence, a beat. We're looking for intent. No one questioned her. They didn't need to. The meeting broke quietly. No conclusions, no answers, only direction. Chapter 15. The Getaway Begins. The flight back from Pinnacle was louder than usual, not because of the engines, because of the laughter. Elise leaned forward in her seat, still smiling. I'm still not over the cake tasting, she said. Who needs 12 options? Apparently we do, Patricia replied dryly, because we couldn't agree on one. Reina laughed softly, glancing out the window. The mountains stretched below them, familiar. I liked the third one, Elise added. You liked all of them, Patricia countered. That's not the point. Reina shook her head, smiling. You argued for 5 different ones, she said, because they were all valid choices. That's not how choices work, Patricia said. Elise ignored her. We're not limiting ourselves just because tradition says we should. Reina laughed again, leaning back slightly. That sounds like something you'll regret later. I regret nothing, Elise said confidently. Patricia muttered, yet. The plane began its descent. Reina straightened slightly as the airstrip came into view, and then she saw him. Landa stood near a smaller aircraft, set apart from the main landing area. Waiting. Reina frowned slightly. That's not our usual pickup. Patricia leaned toward the window. No, she said slowly. It's not. Elise's eyes narrowed. Oh, I like this already. The plane touched down smoothly. Before the engines had fully powered down, Landa was already moving toward them. Reina stepped out first. Landa. He didn't let her finish. His hand closed around hers. Come with me. She blinked. What? He didn't slow. You've done enough for 2 days, he said. Reina pulled back slightly, more out of instinct than resistance. I need to check in with... No. The word wasn't sharp, but it was final. Reina stared at him. You don't... I already did, he said calmly. A beat. Your schedule is clear. She hesitated. My father knows. Another step forward. Her resistance faltered. My team handled. They reached the smaller plane. Reina looked at it, then back at him. What did you do? Landa's expression softened just slightly. I gave you a weekend. Silence. Behind them, Elise let out a quiet, delighted laugh. Oh, this is very good. Reina's dragon stirred, pleased. Mate is done waiting. Reina exhaled softly. She opened her mouth, then closed it, because there was nothing to argue with. Lander stepped closer. No meetings, he said quietly. No decisions. A pause. No expectations. His gaze held hers. Just us. Reina studied him for a moment, then nodded. Okay. Lander didn't smile, but his hand tightened around hers. Good. He guided her toward the plane. Reina laughed softly as she stepped inside. The door closed behind them, and the noise of everything else faded in the air. The plane leveled out smoothly as it climbed above the clouds. The cabin settled into a quiet hum. Reina leaned back in her seat, gaze drifting briefly toward the window. The seatbelt light clicked off. Before she could move, Lander reached over and unfastened her belt. Lander! He didn't answer. Instead, he drew her toward him. Reina blinked as he pulled her into his lap. What are you doing? Sit. The word was quiet, certain. Reina exhaled softly, settling against him. His arm came around her, steady and warm. She shifted slightly, adjusting, then stilled. Because he wasn't asking anything of her. Not conversation, not explanations, just stay. Her head rested against his shoulder. The steady rhythm of his breathing grounded her. Silence settled, not empty, easy. Lander's hand moved lightly along her arm, a slow, absent motion. Reina let her eyes drift closed, just for a moment, the longer. Her body softened against him, and he felt it. The shift, the release she hadn't given herself. He didn't move, didn't speak, just held her there. Time passed quietly, unmeasured, unimportant. When the plane began its descent, she didn't wake. Lander adjusted slightly, careful not to disturb her, and stayed exactly where he was. When she stirred, the engines were quiet, the cabin still. Reina blinked slowly, disoriented for a moment. Then, she realized, you didn't wake me. No. She shifted slightly, stretching. How long? Long enough. Reina studied him. You stayed like this the whole time. Yes. A pause. You needed it. Reina didn't argue, because she had. The island air was warm, soft. The world felt distant. By the time they reached the private villa, everything had already been arranged. Reina barely had time to take it in before Lander guided her inside. A massage, she said, blinking. And more, Lander replied. Reina turned to him. You planned this? Yes, no hesitation. A small smile formed despite herself. You're very thorough. I am. He didn't elaborate, didn't need to. The hours that followed blurred together. Warm oils worked into her skin in slow, practiced motions. Soft music drifted through the room, low, steady. Hands moved with quiet precision, easing tension she hadn't even realized she carried. A facial followed, cool, calming, everything unhurried. Intentional, no conversation required, no decisions to make, just stillness. By the time evening settled in, Reina moved differently, not lighter, looser, unrestricted. Dinner was already waiting, simple, perfectly prepared. They ate without hurry, no discussions of strategy, no plans, just presence. A quiet exchange of glances, a few soft words, enough. Later, in the quiet of their suite, Reina curled into the bed without hesitation. Sleep came quickly, naturally. Lander remained awake, watching her, her breathing steady, her expression finally at ease. No tension, no restraint. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His dragon stirred, deeply satisfied. Hours. Lander didn't move, didn't look away. For the first time since the avalanche, he allowed himself to be still. The getaway, first full day. Reina woke slowly, not to urgency, but to stillness. For a moment she didn't move. Her dragon stirred first, then a low, contented purr. Reina blinked, staring up at the unfamiliar ceiling, the island, Lander, the quiet. She exhaled softly, sinking deeper into the bed. Her body felt different, looser, unburdened. Her dragon stretched lazily within her, better. Reina closed her eyes briefly, not thinking, just feeling the absence of everything that had filled her before. After a moment, she sat up slowly, brushing her hair back. Then she paused. I didn't bring anything. The realization hit all at once. No clothes, no planning, no preparation. Of course. Reina slipped out of bed and crossed to the closet, opened it, and stopped. Clothes. Not just clothes. Everything. Light fabrics, flowing lines. Soft colors suited perfectly for the island air. Her size, her taste. Every piece exactly right. Reina let out a quiet laugh. He planned this. Her dragon hummed, pleased. For longer than you think. Reina reached out, running her fingers over a light blue sundress. She held it up, then smiled. Well, I suppose I don't have a choice. When she stepped out onto the balcony, the sun was already warm against her skin. The dress moved lightly with the breeze. She glanced down at herself, light blue. Reina laughed softly. He didn't even try to hide it. Lander stepped inside moments later. His gaze found her instantly and held for just a moment. You're awake. Reina turned toward him, a small smile forming. I found the closet. A faint curve touched his lips. I thought you might. She tilted her head slightly. You planned this for a while. Yes. No hesitation. Reina shook her head, amused. Of course you have. Lander stepped closer. Breakfast is ready. Breakfast was not simple. Fresh fruit, warm pastries, multiple preparations laid out with quiet precision. Reina paused at the table, taking it in. You've outdone yourself. Lander pulled out her chair. She sat. He said nothing, didn't need to. Afterward, they walked the beach, barefoot, the sand warm beneath their feet, the ocean stretching endlessly before them. No guards, no expectations, just space. Reina stepped into the water, letting it wash over her ankles, then turned back toward Lander. This was a good idea. A faint smile. I know, she laughed. Of course he did. They swam, the water cool and clear. Time passed without measure, without urgency. Later they sat on the balcony, lunch between them, the breeze soft, the world quiet. Reina leaned back, closing her eyes briefly. I feel like myself again. The words were quiet, honest. Lander watched her. Good. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. Don't let me forget this, she said. A small smile touched his lips. I won't. The last evening. The sun dipped low over the horizon, painting the sky in soft gold and deepening shades of blue. Reina stood barefoot on the terrace, watching the last light settle over the water. The world beyond the island felt far away. For once, she let it stay that way. Behind her, the soft sound of the doors opening broke the quiet. Lander stepped out onto the terrace. Stay there, he said quietly. Reina turned slightly, one brow lifting. That sounds like a command. A faint curve touched his mouth. It is. She didn't move. Curiosity sharpened. Lander disappeared briefly inside. When he returned, the terrace had changed. A small table had been set. Candles flickered softly in the evening breeze, glass catching the last of the light. Flowers rested at the center, simple, intentional. Reina's breath caught. You did this. Yes. No hesitation. She stepped closer, fingers brushing lightly over the petals. They're beautiful. His gaze stayed on her. I know. She looked up, catching the meaning, and laughed softly. Dinner unfolded without urgency, no strategy, no planning, just quiet conversation. Fragments of memory, small observations. The kind of things that didn't need to be held onto, but mattered anyway. Dessert lingered, the candles burned lower. The sky deepened into night. Eventually, Reina leaned back slightly, exhaling. I don't want to go back yet. Lander's gaze didn't shift. We will. A beat. But not tonight. She nodded slowly. That was enough. Later, inside the suite, the quiet wrapped around them again. Reina moved without hurry, no tension, no urgency, just ease. Lander watched her for a moment before stepping closer. Reina. She turned toward him. Something in his tone made her pause. What is it? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached for her hand. You can't go back to how you were, he said quietly. The words settled between them, not heavy, but real. Reina held his gaze. I was managing it. You were carrying it. A pause. Alone. She didn't argue, because she couldn't. Lander's grip tightened slightly. You have people who can carry part of that with you, he said. A beat. And you have me. Reina's breath softened. I know. Then use it. Not a command, a request. Step back when you need to. His gaze didn't waver. And if you won't do it for yourself, a pause. Do it for me. That landed. Deep. Reina looked at him for a long moment. Something shifted. Not resistance. Recognition. I don't know how to stop, she admitted quietly. Lander's expression didn't change. Then don't stop, he said. A beat. Just don't do it alone. Silence settled between them. This wasn't about the wedding or the investigation. It was about her and what she was willing to carry. Reina exhaled slowly. Then, I promise. The words were quiet, but certain. Lander studied her for a moment, then nodded. Good. He stepped closer, his hands settling at her waist. Reina didn't pull back, didn't brace. She leaned into him, naturally. Her head resting against his shoulder. His hand moved slowly along her back. Not urgent, not demanding. Just there. Outside, the ocean moved steadily against the shore. Inside, they stood together. Close. Certain. And, for a moment, it felt like nothing else existed beyond that space between them. Thank you for listening to Destiny Challenged by Fire, Part 3 on Enchanted Realms. We hope you are enjoying these stories of love and adventure in the fantasy world of Dragon Shifters. Please like and subscribe to get notifications. Coming next, from royal preparations to a breathtaking getaway, the journey continues. The time for preparation is over. The wedding approaches. As the kingdoms gather to witness a union unlike any before it, Reina faces the final steps toward her future. The gown is breathtaking. The crown awaits. But beneath the silk and lace stands the heart of a warrior, because a dragon queen was never meant to walk in fragile shoes. Destiny challenged by fire. Part 4. The final fitting. The royal wedding and the unforgettable reveal of the queen's boots.